For NYUp.com, I am Matt Parrino, and the Buffalo Bills are taking on the Chicago Bears this week. We are just 12 hours removed from the Monday night game against the New England Patriots, but we're on to Chicago week, another home game. So I decided to bring in Rich Campbell from the Chicago Tribune, talk a little bit about the Bears. Rich, thank you so much for joining me.
Hope you got your coffee, man. Those Monday Night Football turnarounds can be tough. We had one in week 2. Bears beat the Seahawks in that one, and the Bears are coming to Buffalo looking to kick an opponent while they're down.
Yes, and the Bills are down indeed right now. You're looking at last night. A real offensive struggle continues for the Buffalo Bills. Really hard to get points generated, and this defense comes out, holds Tom Brady to only field goals through 3 quarters before he finally is able to break the Patriots through in the 4th quarter. But that's the big storyline in Buffalo right now. It's just the offense isn't working. They brought in Derek Anderson because Nathan Peterman was so bad early on that they didn't feel he could be, the stopgap, between when Josh Allen got injured and when he comes back. So now it's Derek Anderson who's struggling off the street, 2nd straight start. But for the Bears, I mean, that's what you're here to talk about. Big win against the Jets last week. They stand at 4-3. I'm going to talk a little bit about some similarities between these teams later, but what happened in that game last week where Chicago was able to have some success?
There's some big similarities between that matchup and the one the Bears are looking at this coming Sunday, and that was a depleted Jets offense. The Jets were down their top 2 receivers, Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa, have been out. They're down their 2nd running back in Bilal Powell. And it left the Jets with just such an undermanned attack with rookie quarterback Sam Darnold that the Bears were able to be very aggressive against the run and weren't threatened in the deep passing game really at all. And the stats showed it. 10 points allowed, 207 yards of offense for the Jets. That was the Bears' best total of the season. Only 2.4 yards per play averaged by the Jets. You have to go back to 2013 to find a Bears defensive game that was that good. So it was a very timely matchup for the Bears as well, because they were coming off a loss in Miami in overtime in which they tackled very poorly, gave up some big plays in that. Then the previous week, they gave up 38 points to the Patriots and Tom Brady, 14 on special teams, but you get the point that the Patriots are a tough matchup. So the Bears defense got healthy, and I will imagine they are really excited to see the Bills having quarterback problems, turnover problems, and problems moving the ball through the air.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I want to talk a little bit about this matchup, how these two teams stack up. But first, I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of similarities to these two franchises. We talked a little bit about it before we began. But you look at the Bears quarterback situation. They went out and they drafted Mitchell Trubisky. They decided that was their guy. They were going to build around him a little bit raw at the time, and you've seen it over the course of his progression. I've even read some of your stuff recently, and there's still some question marks around Mitchell Trubisky and his development, and if he's going to be able to get that comfort level in the pocket. And I almost feel like that's exactly what we're talking about in Josh Allen here in Buffalo. He came out and he had his moments. I think that, when you go back and look early on, that win against Minnesota on the road, they managed the game for him a bit, but it was still an impressive performance on the road. I think you like that competitive nature. But tell me a little bit about Mitchell Trubisky, where he is at this stage in his development in year 2.
Yeah, in order to really get the full context, go back to his 12 starts as a rookie when he took over in the 5th game. The Bears' offense was completely undermanned, particularly at receiver, and it was apparent as the Bears went through that season that they were going to have to overhaul the receiving core in the offseason. I know that sounds familiar to you and the viewers here. And the offense that he was in was really stripped down. I mean, it was a coaching staff that quite frankly, it was coaching for its job at the time, for its survival. And at some point along the way to 5-11, it became very obvious that they were going to make a change there. And when they did, they really wanted to go offense. General manager Ryan Pace is he made his way through the NFL front office ranks in New Orleans with the Super Bowl team at the Saints, Drew Brees, Sean Payton. And so that's the model that Pace operates off of, that the key to sustainable success is an offensive-minded coach with a super talented quarterback. And that's what they are trying to build here with Matt Nagy. He was the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs a year ago. So you understand a little bit about the offense that they're using. It's a lot of different personnel groupings, a lot of pre-snap movement, motion, a lot of option concepts, and it's a very quarterback-intensive offense. And as you mentioned, Matt, with Mitch still being raw, I mean, Sunday's game will be only his 20th start in the NFL. There's still a lot for Mitch to do to gain full command of this offense, and you see those growing pains, I think, in the way that sometimes he gets very bouncy in the pocket, that his mechanics will escape him at times, and he will miss throws that he's capable of making. You know, when the Bears traded up to number 2, they traded up one spot in the 2017 draft, 3-2, and they drafted Trubisky. They touted his accuracy. And really, that's been inconsistent. That's the one element of his game that everyone in Chicago is looking for to click. And that's when you'll know that he's got full command of this offense. It's still a ways away, and the Bills will have a chance to really get after him with some of their pressures, some of their mixed coverages, and particularly the zone coverage, which he has struggled off and on against all season.
Mm-hmm. You talk about accuracy, and that's interesting because that's, you know, the bugaboo of Josh Allen. And, you know, coming out of the draft, you know, experts said that the problem that he's going to find is consistently, you know, putting the ball in the spots that it needs to be in. You talk about that wide receiver group. You guys made the Bears made some additions this offseason. We talked a little bit about the Baltimore Ravens and what they did, going out and bringing in 3 veteran wide receivers and Willie Snead, John Brown, Michael Crabtree. The Bills saw them in week 1. That's something that I think is going to be important for the Bills, you know, going into next season, and starting to position some weapons around Josh Allen, because right now you're dealing with a wide receiver group that isn't performing. Zay Jones is developing a bit here. He had 5 catches last night, a big game with Derek Anderson almost throwing for 300 yards. So there's glimpses, but you're going to want to put some pieces around. What have the Bears done to kind of put some weapons around Trubisky?
Yeah, the whole offseason, the mantra was basically get Mitch help. And they did that in a big way. They signed Allen Robinson. He was their high-priced free agent signing from the Jaguars. He missed all of last season with an ACL. I'm not sure if there was a discount involved there, but they really like him as a Z receiver, type of possession receiver who can make contested catches, really sharp route runner, and good in the red zone. We haven't seen him get off consistently, and Robinson missed last week's game with a lingering groin injury. It's quite possible that he sits out Sunday's game against the Bills, which would be a nice check mark in Buffalo's favor for that defense. But the Bears are diverse enough. They also signed Taylor Gabriel from the Falcons as an X-receiver. He can fly extremely fast, and the Bears use him in a lot of different ways. They'll use him in the running game, they'll use him in the screen game, and the vertical game. And so far, as Gabriel has gone from, over the course of his career with the Falcons and Browns, about 55% of the snaps for those teams, he's now playing over 80% of the snaps in Chicago. So an elevated role, and he's reliable, good team guy. He's got good hands, good route runner, and Trubisky has a connection there. They also traded up in the second round to draft Anthony Miller, slot receiver out of Memphis. Miller had a key touchdown against the Jets last week in the third quarter. It was a sight adjustment with Trubisky, a back shoulder corner route, which you don't really see very often, but they both recognized that Buster Screen of the Jets had covered the top of that corner route, and Trubisky threw it to his back shoulder. Miller adjusted and made a catch. It was a terrific example of, you know, a young receiver, a young quarterback starting to get some of the option elements to Nagy's offense, and they executed it. So that connection is building. And they also signed tight end Trey Burton. He was the Eagles' 3rd tight end a year ago. Viewers probably remember him best. He was the one who threw the touchdown to Nick Foles in the Super Bowl on Philly Special. Burton's a former amateur quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Burton's been a great find. He's been a versatile tight end. They call him this U tight end. He moves all around the formation. They'll get him downfield. They'll get him in cutting routes. They'll use him on shovel passes. And he's also been a good blocker. So those 4 guys, I mean, that's a lot of acquisitions there. Those 4 guys have really transformed a group of receivers that coming into the season, the Bears pretty much just wiped out. They just wiped out the depth chart and started anew, and it's starting to pay off.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're a Bills fan and you're looking at this matchup this week at 2-6 with the season pretty much all but over, I think that you can find some positives in the fact that you're going to see a young quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky come to New Era Field, one of the tougher places to play in the league. Tom Brady even says it every time he comes here. He knows he's in for a long night. So does Bill Belichick. He spoke a little bit about it. So, if the Bills Mafia can get up for this game, it will be a tough place to play for him. And this defense, like we talked about a little bit before we started, is, they're ending this week, I think, is the 4th or 3rd ranked overall, defense in the league. They like to create turnovers. They're ranked number 1 in the league at forcing fumbles. And they're getting consistent pass rush. I mean, you look at guys like Lorenzo Alexander, Jerry Hughes, Kyle Williams in the middle, guys that have been in this league a long time that are still playing at a high level, and they're going to be in the face of Mitchell Trubisky this Sunday. Very exciting matchup to watch. But on the other side of the ball, a guy that, Buffalo sports fans are very familiar with, Khalil Mack, the pride of the University at Buffalo, my alma mater.
Okay.
You
can wear your put your jersey away this week.
Yes.
I'm sure that they're all over the place there.
Exactly. So, obviously everybody's had this one kind of marked on the schedule because after that trade early on in the season. What has Khalil Mack meant to this Chicago defense, this team, and how has he played? And also, is he going to play this week? Is there any update on that?
Yeah, he's meant everything, and it's been a wild 2 months in that regard. So really have to divide Mack's season so far, the 7 games he's been with the Bears, into 2 parts. Let's go back to August 31st, September 1st, whichever it was. I think it was September 1st, cut down day. The Bears had gone through all of training camp with a building defense. It was a top 10 defense a year ago, but a lot of questions about their edge rush presence, whether they were going to be able to get after the quarterback from the outside linebacker spot, such a pivotal position in the 3-4. So they trade for Khalil Mack, sign him to the richest contract for a defensive player in NFL history, and immediately he came in and galvanized the group. First 4 games, he had a strip sack in every game. It was insane how quickly and how just absolutely he impacted everybody around him. I mean, there were players, such as Danny Trevathan, inside linebacker, who, is a good player, a good tackler, but sort of lacked the splash play element to his game. He's getting sacks, forced fumbles. He was NFC Defensive Player of the Week in week 2. Mack just seemed to lift everybody around him. And entering their bye week after week 4, the Bears were a top 2 defense in the league. They were first in sacks. Going into last week, they led the league in takeaways. I mean, everything you want from a defense, they were, and it coincided with Mack's arrival. But in the first half of the game against the Dolphins in week 6, their 5th game, Mack hurt his ankle. And since then, he does not have a quarterback hit. The defense played 2 subpar games against the Dolphins and Patriots, where their tackling sort of slipped. A group that had tackled very well through the first 4 games suddenly wasn't tackling well. They were giving up big plays. And everybody looks at Mack and says, man, this defense really needs him. And as you alluded to, Matt, he sat out against the Jets. They're trying to get him healthy. The Bears figured they could get through that game against a depleted Jets team and maybe get Mack well. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they approach a terrible Bills offense this week, because after this Bills game, the Bears begin a stretch of 12 days, 3 divisional games. They go Lions, Vikings, Lions on Thanksgiving. And that's the trio of games that's going to define the Bears season. So can they get past the Bills without Mack? Can the Bills passing game sort of sink itself and the rest of these guys do enough? I kind of lean in that direction. I think that's the way we're going to go because of the importance of those divisional games coming up. But if Mack is at full strength, he's an absolute menace, and it's been a lot of fun to watch him when he has been.
Mm-hmm. And so Mack you're expecting him to miss this game?
I would say, yeah, if I had to bet right now. Obviously, it's still pretty early in the week as we sit here Tuesday morning. The Bears will practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I would expect Mack will not practice either Wednesday or Thursday. That's exactly how it went the last 2 weeks. Now, he practiced Friday in both of the previous weeks, played against the Patriots, and sat against the Jets. So even as we get through Friday into Saturday, Sunday, we still probably are going to be following a blueprint that could ultimately take us one way or the other. But I just think that with the Lions, Vikings, and Lions coming up, I mean, that's absolutely the stretch that's going to define this Bears season. They need Mack for those games. And for as much as Matt Nagy said Monday, they're not taking into account those divisional games in assessing Mack on a game-to-game basis, I think it's too short-sighted. So I would guess, maybe an educated guess, that he doesn't play. But we will see. Got it.
So before I let you get out of here, I usually like to do 3 keys to the game, but I'm just going to shrink it down to 1 this week because for me, it's pretty simple. I think that this Bills team just has to get their offense going. This defense is week after week after week, kind of, aside from the Indianapolis Colts game where their running game got going, it was a very odd game on the road. But you wonder how much the defense was worn down by the ineptitude of the offense. But they're moving the ball. They're seeing glimpses of potential playmaking. They're just not able to sustain anything. And Derek Anderson looked like he got hurt at the end of this game last night, so we could be looking at a Nathan Peterman versus Mitchell Trubisky showdown next Sunday, which would be a very interesting storyline in and of itself. But I think that the key is, the mentality in the locker room, the Bills locker room, has been and continues to be, we're putting in the work. We're doing everything we can to get this ship righted. LaShawn McCoy is unhappy. He's frustrated. He talked yesterday about the fact that he's just simply not playing good enough. And so you take all those things into account, and any week this could maybe things could flip. And we saw some things in preseason where Brian Daboll, new offensive coordinator in Buffalo, his offense was able to have some success. So I think the key to this game is I think you're going to get a good effort again from this defense against a young quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky on the road. I think your offense needs to start converting 4 for 14 on third down. Need to up that percentage a little bit and get in the end zone.
It's not an ideal matchup for that. I'm one of the last ones to come around on the upswing here in Chicago, but this Bears defense is absolutely legit. They have a menacing front 7, and it starts in the interior, their defensive line with Akeem Hicks. They are so good against the run, and especially we saw it in the Jets game last Sunday when an opposing offense is one-dimensional like the Bills appear to be. They can sell out. They've got sticky corners, Kyle Fuller and Prince Amukamara on the outside, and Bryce Callahan in the slot. Callahan's coming off an excellent game against the Jets, got his hands on a couple passes and a sack. That back end sort of can take care of receivers that either don't threaten them deep or aren't diverse enough, and it sounds like that's the case in Buffalo. And then the front 7 can really work downhill and be aggressive against the run. And we saw that against the Jets. Hicks, his strength will just wreck a game. He'll have to command double teams from that Bills offensive line all game. The Bears, first round draft pick, Roquan Smith, drafted 8th overall. You really are starting to see his range at the inside linebacker position, sideline to sideline. He beats linemen that try to climb to the second level. He's able to get out on the perimeter. He's got great instincts in that regard, and he's making tackles. And so when you have this aggressive approach to stopping the run, really for the Bears it comes down to, can they get a pass rush? They only had 1 sack last week. It sounds like the Bills are giving up a lot of sacks. With or without Mack, they're going to have to account for the pass rush, but it's just not a favorable matchup for any team really in the NFL that needs an offensive breakout. The Bears are disciplined, experienced, and really talented on that side.
No, that's great insight. Before I let you get out of here, Rich, thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find your work, and especially for this Sunday's game?
Yeah, you can follow all of it at chicagotribune.com/Bears. Tons of Bears-Bills previews. We'll have picks and matchup breakdowns. If you want to learn a little bit more about Mitch Trubisky or this defense, it's an interesting team. They're ascending. They are maybe the NFL's best example this season of a last-place team that could make the playoffs, and you get a few of those every year. The Bears are in that mix this year, and it's a rare meeting between the two sides. So, yeah, chicagotribune.com/Bears. I appreciate you having me on, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks again, Rich. And guys, for all your Buffalo Bills content, as always, keep it locked on to NewYorkUpstate.com.